Lincoln was fathered by the legendary South Carolina Senator John C. Calhoun, by the adopted son of Chief Justice John Marshall, by Enloe, or anyone else other than Thomas Lincoln. Still, Du Bois was right on almost everything else. Abe Lincoln was indeed fond of the bawdy tale. He was also ungainly, homely, self-educated, the product of a dirt-poor upbringing, almost always disheveled in appearance, and possessed of a gift for politics, though if it reached down to his toes, as Du Bois claimed, a reference that seemed to deny Lincoln any instinct but the political, it was still not enough to prevent the country from collapsing into its bloodiest war, a civil war, almost from the moment when Lincoln was elected president on November 6, 1860. No matter. For Du Bois, all this was mere preamble anyway. The world is full of illegitimate children, he continued. The world is full of folk whose taste was educated in the gutter. The world is full of people born hating and despising their fellows. To these I love to say, see this man. He was one of you, and yet he became Abraham Lincoln. He became Abraham Lincoln. It is an appealing, though, even for Du Bois's time, unoriginal thought. Through the decades, many have adopted the idea that Lincoln's most important gift was that he was educable, that he, like other underestimated political figures, grew to his greatness while in office, that events and Lincoln's response to those events conspired to make Lincoln Lincoln, that he listened and watched and studied his way to greatness, often with the help of those around him. In 1864, he spoke with humility of no claim to have controlled events, but rather that events have controlled me. And the abolitionist Wendell Phillips once proclaimed that if Lincoln could be said to have grown in office, it is because we have watered him. Still, the old rail splitter is often credited, perhaps erroneously, with saying that by age 40 a man is responsible for his own face, a milestone he realized in 1849, 12 years before he reached the presidency. And one could also claim that Lincoln grew to greatness through a steady climb to the office, beginning in 1838 with his speech before the Young Men's Lyceum of Springfield, Illinois. When a mere 28 years old, he warned with prescience that the greatest threat to the American nation was not some powerful invading country, no Bonaparte, Alexander, or Caesar, but the threat from within. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher, he told his audience, responding in part to mob violence that had led to a lynching in St. Louis, Missouri, and another murder in nearby Alton, Illinois. As a nation of freemen, we must live through all time or die by suicide. Of Lincoln, one could certainly say that he grew after the office, after his death, as we came to appreciate a new contour to the American idea, one birthed by him, and as a kind of shimmering mysticism began to attend his memory, a vision of Lincoln as the American Christ figure, killed on Easter weekend, he was assassinated on Good Friday, for the sin of granting freedom to the oppressed, a God-man, not a man-man, flawless, porcelain, divinely touched, someone to be worshipped more than understood. Among those who had suffered through the Civil War, much of the latter half of the 19th century was spent in an effort to wring meaning from their suffering. They had witnessed so much loss, so much destruction, they now needed to make meaning of it, lest the 600-some thousand dead soldiers and an uncounted number of civilians be seen as having perished in vain. As early as July 1862, Lincoln, recognizing that this was no ordinary American war, most importantly because it involved Americans killing Americans, pushed Congress to pass legislation creating the first national resting places for those who died in service to their country. In the years following the end of the war, tens of thousands of bodies, most of them lacking any identification, were removed from the primitive battlefield graves to be brought to these new national cemeteries, where their deaths could be given recognition. Union soldiers' bodies, that is. The corpses of Confederate soldiers were left to the work of small groups of Southern women who banded together to recover what they could. It wasn't so much the war that created the Union. It was the death from that war and the need to come to terms with it. But Lincoln's death was the big one. If his violent end could be rendered meaningful, if it could be said that he died for some transcendent purpose, then those who'd perished